Welcome to the Stressless Eating podcast, where we help diet-obsessed and food-crazed women break themselves out of the food and body prison, end the dieting madness, and take control of their health for good. I'm your host, Leanne Ellington, and this podcast is about answering one question. How can you heal your relationship with food and your body and take a practical approach to this whole self-love journey, but without all that restriction, obsession, and shame, and without needing years of therapy just to do so? If you want to know the answer, you're in the right place. All this information is 100% free, so please subscribe to and review our podcast. Well, hello, and welcome back to the Stressless Eating podcast. Super excited for today's episode because it's kind of another full circle journey. We have Suzanne back on the podcast. She shared her testimony and case study, probably a year or so ago. And we're back, and now she has, she graduated from Stressless Eating probably like over 2 years ago. And now she's, I'm grateful that she's an ambassador for the program. She's helping me behind the scenes. She's a support system for the gals that are going through the program currently. And it's just a big full circle journey. But I wanted to just kind of bring her back on the podcast, share, some things behind the scenes of what's causing her to show up in her life differently now, even 2 years later, how it's affecting not food in her body necessarily, but we're going to talk about non-related, because everybody thinks like, oh, it's a food problem. Oh, it's a body problem. It's like, no, there's all these other areas of our lives where we are not showing up. We're shrinking ourselves. We're diminishing our worth. And so, yes, it's a food and body and health conversation. And that's always going to be part of our lives as women. We're learning how to take care of ourselves, right? But we're going to talk about some of the auxiliary stuff, like relationships, like owning your worth, like stepping into work stuff. So we're going to dive into all of that. So first off, hello, Suzanne, and welcome back to the podcast.
Hi, Leanne. Thank you so much for the invitation to join you today.
Absolutely. Well, I know that, everybody in the program gets so much value out of your shares. And I wanted to just kind of, let other people share in the wealth of your knowledge and wisdom and just life experiences that have been really, shaping this path for you. So, I'll link your original episode in the show notes for anybody who hasn't met Suzanne yet. She shared her whole journey from, just being in the food and body and shame prison. And so we're going to kind of pick up a little bit where we left off on that episode. One of the things that we talked about for you and when you shared your story is that it wasn't just about food and body. The whole image that you had of yourself was keeping you from stepping into lots of areas of your life. But one of them was love and inviting love into your life. And I know when we very first met, the first time we talked, you were very clear that like, hey, I'm not putting out what I want to come back. But you also were clear, like, I have to love myself first before I can go receive that from somebody else. So kind of picking up from that, can you just share a little bit about what that process was like for you? And then obviously now you're in a relationship with the love of your life, but kind of before we ever met, where were you in your dating and relationship life? And what were some of the beliefs that you had that were keeping you from putting yourself out there?
I'd be happy to talk about that. During rewinding a couple of years, I was definitely in a place that not only was I rejecting myself, I was rejecting others around me. And I wasn't believing if somebody was interested in me. And I really had kind of taken myself out of the dating pool, which was frustrating because one of the key ways that I was defining myself, like if I met you during that time period and somebody said, tell me 5 words about yourself, single would have been the very first thing I would have said to define myself. And I was really mentally stuck on the fact that I had not found my partner. And I personally was interpreting that as rejection from society, rejection by men, and thereby rejecting all of the qualities about me that are great. And I could say, no, I'm confident, and I was perceived as being this very confident, self-assured person. But sometimes that was true, and sometimes it was, fake it till you make it feelings. And I felt fraudulent at times when people would comment to me, you're so self-assured and you prove that perfection isn't necessary to be happy. I think all of that is true, but at the time, how I was defining myself was so hung up on being single that I couldn't get past how I was rejecting myself over and over again by that definition.
Yeah, it's huge. And what you're really hitting on is like, ladies, we don't even realize that our identity and our beliefs shape our behaviors, right? And so alongside that identity of being single were a lot of beliefs. And, Suzanne had her own version of them. And for a lot of my gals that identify as single, a lot of the beliefs that come up when I'm talking to them are like, who's going to want me? Or what if I'm just destined to stay this way forever? Or what if my person's not out there? Or what if what if love isn't in the cards for me? Right. And then whatever food or body shame we have alongside it, and that self-rejection just becomes part of it. And our behaviors are a reflection of our beliefs. So because you had that belief, you weren't taking actions to change your dating life, let alone your self-image, before we met, or you were trying to, but didn't have the tools. And we just get stuck. We get so stuck.
I was stuck. And for me, I would say, really, all of it was rooted. I might say I'm single, and what does that mean? And rejected, and what does that mean? Digging underneath all of that was a mantra that was going in my head of I'm not worthy.
Yeah, absolutely.
When I dug down underneath, what does all of this mean for me? That's what it meant.
Absolutely.
And that was where I needed to start.
Yeah. And that's the thing where people get hung up, because a lot of people can really resonate with what you're saying is they realize like this deep-seated unworthiness, but telling yourself, looking in the mirror and saying you are worthy and you deserve everything that you want doesn't work. Because if your self-image deep down inside is saying, no, you're not worthy. And maybe you're not using those words specifically, ladies, if you're hearing this, maybe you're not using the words, I'm not worthy. Maybe you're using the words like, I'm not enough, or you're not skinny enough, or successful enough, or pretty enough, or any of those things. Even the like, who's going to want me thoughts, even calling yourself fat, right? Those are symptoms of a deep down unworthiness. And that's why, positive thinking and fake it till you make it and motivational rah-rah doesn't work. Because if you have that wiring in your brain, like Suzanne was sharing, it becomes an identity. And one of the things I want to touch on too, that you said that was so powerful is, a lot of women think like, oh my gosh, I have to hit like my rock bottom in order to go shift things. No, most of the women that come through Stressless Eating, ladies, are just like Suzanne, outwardly projecting confidence, successful in every area of their lives. This is the elephant in the room. So don't think for a minute that you have to be at some deep, dark rock bottom or in some black hole to get yourself out of it.
It's so true. And I remember the pivotal moment for me was one day when I looked in the mirror and I didn't say, oh, you look pretty, or you look good or bad in this outfit. You look this or that. I looked at myself and said, you look lovable. I remember like that was just it brings tears to my eyes because it was such a big moment for me in defining my own worth.
Yeah.
I am lovable. And it had nothing to do with my size. It had nothing to do with accomplishments. It had nothing to do with relationship status or any of the other things that I was using to define my own worth. It was just like, no, I breathe. I'm a human being. For me, I'm a child of God, and all of that means I am lovable. And in that lovable statement, I redefined my own worth.
Oh my gosh, I remember that happening. I remember you sharing that with me. And like, it's just, ladies, all of you have that one pivotal moment in you that's coming. I would love for you to speak about the age factor, for example. So a lot of us have limiting beliefs, but one of the things that comes up when it comes to food struggles and body struggles is like, Leanne, I've been like this for so many long. I'm 40, 50, 60 years old, and I've been struggling with this since I was a kid. Can this ever change for me? But also on the love conversation, a lot of women think like, oh, if I'm, now it's happening earlier. I hear people in their mid-20s saying this, but 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, I've never found love. Is it too late for me? Can you just kind of speak to some of the thoughts that you had about that and what you now see is true about that?
I would be happy to. I was the perpetually single gal. I, had some dating relationships in my adult life and just hadn't found the air quotes, the one. And I was at times depressed about it, feeling dejected. but I ultimately recognized that every step you take on the path of your life is leading you to where you're meant to be. And part of my work with you, Leanne, has been about like, who do I want to be in a relationship? So that helped me to really think through, how do I want to show up every day for myself, for a partner, for the other people in my life, for the world. And that was the part that I knew that I had influence over. I don't have influence over what's the timing of meeting somebody and who that somebody is going to be and what are the circumstances around that. I couldn't influence all of those pieces, but I could influence who I am on a daily basis and how I show up in the world. So I don't think it's a surprise that, and I was also using the journal to be grateful in advance for all of the qualities that were going to show up in my life in a partner. And I really was putting that out there to the universe, like, this is exactly what I'm looking for. Here are the qualities that I want. Here are the things. And they were also, what are the qualities that I want to develop in myself? Mm-hmm. And how do I show up better? And I didn't meet my Jose until I was 50. Mm-hmm. And really, I think my family had kind of, decided she's just going to be single Aunt Susie. And in a lot of ways in my life, I had resigned myself to the fact that I probably am going to be, single. And I was coming to a different place of acceptance about that on the work that I was doing for myself. But I know that part of why I met Jose at the time that I did had to do about my openness about what I was looking for. And I can say with all honesty, it's the first relationship that I showed up exactly as who I am, not for who I thought they wanted or what they would be attracted to or be looking for. That's a no-win situation when you're looking at a relationship wondering, do I measure up to their expectations? I walked into this fully knowing this is who I am. I have no apologies about it. I'm not perfect. Here are my flaws, but here are my strengths. And he did the same. And that was a completely different way for me to show up in a romantic relationship than I ever had in my whole life. And it felt freeing. It felt really validating that this person liked me exactly as I am. And not only liked me, but loves me exactly as I am. And I had to come to a point of loving myself exactly as I am before I could appreciate being able to show somebody exactly who I am and give them an opportunity to love me that way.
Amen. Yeah. It's so interesting too, because a lot of women think like, oh, when I lose the weight, then I'll invite love in, or not even like the waiting for the weight conversation, but then also just like you said, almost resigning to the fact of like, well, just maybe this is my life, and the reality is we're not resigning to the fact that we don't want love. Our hearts want love. It's like one of the strongest desires as women, right? But what we resign to is the fact that we don't think it's possible or we don't think we're worthy of it, right? And, and also it becomes this conversation of like, I have to be a certain way for somebody to like me. And then we posture, we please, we mold ourselves, we perform, we try to perfect ourselves. And what happens is we grow less and less in love with ourselves, or we fall more and more out of love with who we are because we're so focused on somebody accepting us that and that's the thing. Nobody tells us, wait a minute. When you accept yourself, you're going to be able to receive acceptance. When you love yourself, you're going to be able to receive love. When you feel beautiful, you're going to be able to receive somebody else seeing you through the eyes of beauty. And again, nobody talks about that. We see there's a multi-billion dollar industry telling you to just go on keto and lose weight and then you'll be happy. And it's like, wait, what about this other stuff, And one of the things that, it's manifested beautiful things in my life that, specific. And here's the thing. As we're recording this, I'm 38 years old, and in today's society, I wrote a post about it, I remember a few years ago, like to some people I'm behind and I'm not on the timeline of everyone else. But what I know now is like, if I had married somebody when I was 30, I would have brought all of my food stuff and body stuff and shame stuff. And I probably would be divorced by now not because somebody couldn't love me, but because I couldn't love me, and it's about running your own race. There's no timelines. There's no deadlines. There's no storylines. You have to decide, are you willing and ready and able to receive love right now? Then if so, it is your duty, in my opinion, to remove all of the obstacles, which are really just beliefs that are keeping you from feeling worthy of receiving it, And I had it too, all these beliefs that are like, maybe love isn't in the cards for you and all that. And I'm like, no, I am not going to settle and receive those lies. They are just lies and they're beliefs that I do not have to believe in. And when I started believing that not only is my man out there and he's looking for me too, but when he meets me, he's going to love me just as I am. He's going to love all the parts of me that took me forever to love. And he's going to make me a better version of myself. He's going to make me even more me because I'm going to be more me and authentic and aligned around him. And it's not a coincidence. We had parallel belief systems along the way. And both of us are now in relationships with the love of our lives. This is not a love podcast episode, but it's just saying it's not a coincidence that when your beliefs are aligned for loneliness and rejection and not being able to receive love and not feeling beautiful and worthy, you are not going to find that, or you'll settle for a relationship with an avoidant or somebody who's not emotionally available. That's the other thing. Becoming emotionally available to yourself is when you can then attract emotionally available men or women, whichever the case may be. And so I hear this time and time again. It's actually, that is the other side of it. Like, not women that are just not only like sitting on the sidelines of their life, but maybe they are playing full out in their dating world and wondering why they're getting like emotionally abusive or gaslighting men, or in some cases like narcissistic, sociopathic avoidance, it's true. And I have conversations with, there's a couple people in my life that, that are still navigating their romantic life. And when I hear things saying like, oh my gosh, like, and they're my age, like, Leanne, I'm 38 years old. And like, what if I want to get married and I want to have kids? And I'm like, yeah, but like, you can't look at it like that. You've got to and part of it is that faith, like positive expectation, positive anticipation, conversation of like, hey, I just have to believe. Because ladies listening to this, you're either positively anticipating your future or you're negatively anticipating your future. It's really one or the other. It's that simple. And so I invite you all to like, not in a delusional optimism kind of way, but in a very practical faith-based version of like, hey, I am not willing to settle for the fact that I'm going to be alone the rest of my life. I'm not going to believe that lie. And I am open to the possibility that my man or woman, whichever the case may be, is out there looking for me. And I just have to be available emotionally to myself to receive that person when they show up. What if that was the conversation for you? It's the conversation that Suzanne started entertaining after 48 years of not? And so can you speak to that for a second about like, yeah, you had a lot of momentum the other direction, but when you have the brain and the beliefs and a system of thinking to actually take you in the other direction, it doesn't matter how long you've been a certain way. Can you kind of speak to the speed, so to speak, for you? Sure. And how quickly things shift when you started the brain and the nervous system and the beliefs?
Yeah. Before I say that, I would also say, stressless eating, in my mind, is all a love conversation. Yeah. It's not a love conversation, but it is a love conversation about yourself, about yourself, and how do you define that, and what does that mean, and how can you accept yourself differently with love and push yourself differently with love to redefine how you look at yourself and define yourself and the role that food plays or stress plays, because I really have focused on the stressless part of this just as much as the eating part of this.
Yeah. Love that. Yeah, so well.
And I would say the timeline, I remember in my 30s having somebody say to me, and it was really helpful that they said, I didn't get married until I was 45. And if I had known at 35 how good my life would be at 45, I would never have spent a minute worrying. Mm-hmm. And it helped me at that time to be reminded to look for what is the advantage of whatever stage of life I'm in. So as a single person, that meant like, I'm going to go travel with my friends. I'm going to embrace the freedom of being single, and I'm going to sleep in the middle of the bed and know that one of the advantages is that I look super rested compared to my friends who are married and have kids. And, embrace getting a full night's sleep when others are struggling because they're taking care of kiddos. And, so I really I tried to adopt that philosophy of the grass is not greener on the other side. How do I make the grass that I'm in as green as I want it to be, whatever situation I'm in? And that definitely helped me during some low times thinking about that definition of being single. And I would say, part of the timing for me, because it's similar to you, if I had been serious or married any of the men I had dated when I was younger, I certainly would have been divorced. There's no doubt about it, because and not because there's anything wrong with them, but I wasn't showing up as me fully. And, at some point in a relationship, you start to show up as yourself fully. And sometimes that's when you're a little more honest with yourself that maybe this person doesn't have the qualities or characteristics you're looking for. And maybe they're not bringing out the very best in you either. Oh, yeah. So I would say that the age related to love is almost irrelevant. It is about, are you loving yourself first? And are you fully accepting yourself first? And then you will be able to open that full self up to somebody else. And it's not about what your gene size is or the number on your scale or what your hair looks like. Is it gray or is it, a natural color? Are you wrinkled or smooth skinned? I mean, the ultimate connection of love is heart to heart, and it's not about the outward appearance.
Yeah. Oh, so many cool things that you're saying. I have, when people say to me, hey, Leanne, but I was just talking to a woman actually this week, and she's in her 60s and she wants love, but there's things that are keeping her from it. And I totally get it. Age is not a discrimination. Like, this happens to women that are in their 20s that are like, Leanne, I'm 28 and I haven't found love. Like, am I doomed? And it's like, again, this problem doesn't discriminate. It happens to every woman because it's a belief struggle, right? But one of my mentors used to say, it's true, but it's also irrelevant. So your age, whatever your age is, whatever your weight is, the fact that you are a certain age and a certain weight and single, it's true, but it's also irrelevant. It really comes down to and it's not that it doesn't matter that you're sad about it, right? It's just it doesn't make a difference in how your future has to manifest, right? Part of it is if you choose to believe the lie that you are X and therefore you're single, or you're Y and therefore you're single, you are going to be a victim to your circumstances. What you have to do is you have to take radical ownership of your belief system, and you have to change it and create the life that you want. And it really is that simple, right? Simple, not easy, but you've got to draw a line in the sand where you say, no, I'm done believing this lie, because this doing more of the same is the cycle of insanity, the definition of insanity. I met up with a good girlfriend yesterday who we haven't seen each other. We've texted and talked and stuff to keep in touch, but we got together for a walk yesterday because we hadn't really seen much of each other in the pandemic. And, we were catching each other up. And of course she wanted to hear about my relationship. And one of the things that I said to her, because she's been on the sidelines of the different men that I've dated, in the last 5 years since I moved to Tennessee. And I said to her, I was like, yeah, he makes every other person that I've dated make sense. And I see why they were all a really important role in becoming who I needed to become to attract Charles. And it really is we can look back at our past air quotes failures as failures, or we can look back at them of evidence of this is where I learned what I didn't like and what I didn't want and who I don't want to be and who I do want to be and all these things. Again, it's a choice.
Absolutely. And, one of the definitions that I had struggled with at the time, this is a very limiting belief, was I felt like God was somehow punishing me. Why? So I'm a faith-filled person. Why hasn't God put this person in my life? I'm being left behind for some reason. I feel persecuted for some reason. And I remember the day that there was there was some research study done. The happiest people on earth are single women without kids. And when I read that, there was a part of me that shifted that day. I was like, so what if all along God has been actually protecting me, saying, you're a super happy person and you may never be any happier than this. And whether, here's the reality. God was not persecuting me or rewarding me. There's nothing I could do to make him love me more or less. But that was the story that was going in my mind. And I remember how everything shifted when I read that research study, and it made me say, what if? What if I've been looking at this all wrong? What if this story was completely fabricated in my head and I've been feeling crappy because I've been telling myself this story?
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things that came in my head when you said that is I'm like, who the happiest people in the world are? The people who learn what it takes for them to be happy, and it's like
the people who accept themselves and embrace their life as it is.
And define it, and happiness is like, it's not this like all encompassing thing. Like happy people aren't necessarily happy all the time. It is a state of being, but like there's going to be ebbs and flows in life, but like, as you were saying that, like when you embraced this idea of, hey, what if I embraced my singleness right now while I'm single, and found happiness now? And it's such a similar pattern for women that are like, again, when I lose the weight, then I'll be happy. When I'm a certain, dress size or gene number, I'll be happy. And it's the same thing. When I'm with a person, then I'll be happy. It's like, no, what if you started at happy and brought that with you into your relationship? Trying to create relationships, and brought that with you into your weight loss journey, and brought that with you into your health journey. Again, Start at healthy, start at happy, and bring it with you. Because I'm telling you, ladies, I have been in relationships and I was miserable, and I have been at my most dreamy, so to speak, weight, and I was miserable, right? And you go, what do they say? Everywhere you go, there you are. So you're going to bring whatever internal, like I was just about to say baggage, but it really is just your internal narrative with you. And sometimes it feels heavy and it feels like a lot of extra baggage, right?
It's so true. Yeah. And it seems like such an easy concept to just change your mind and lay that weight down. But it is a process, is what I found. And you have definitely helped me in that process to identify the areas where I have a narrative that is not helping me or that is limiting me or is hurting me, and how to rewrite that narrative. Absolutely. And it doesn't take long. And it is amazing when that shift happens simply from letting go of a belief that is hurting you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And one of those beliefs, was how I was defining myself as single. And I dated Jose almost fully during the pandemic. There are lots of people in my life who've not met him yet, or who have no idea that I have been dating him for nearly 2 years. And what's interesting is they don't treat me any differently now that I'm in a couple with Jose than they did when I was single.
Yeah, absolutely.
The treatment, the only person who was treating me differently, being single or being in a relationship, was me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And kind of stacking on what you said a minute ago, like, yeah, changing your beliefs and your mindset about it. It's simple, not easy, but like once you have a plan, it absolutely is. But it's also it's not logical. Like I live in the beautiful world that everybody lives in, where if you post something on social media, like there might be people that you've never met from the peanut gallery giving their opinion. So I had a post about like emotional eating and the firing and wiring that happens alongside food and how it's different in the female brain. And I had this woman who I don't know, but she's a psychotherapist, comment on my post being like, I think a lot of emotional eating is just macro depletion. Like if you just eat more good carbs, fats, and protein, emotional eating goes away. And I'm like, okay, cool. I appreciate your response. And maybe that might be part of the solution. But first of all, that's such a logical solution to an emotional problem when most of these women are not eating because they're hungry and they need carbs, fats, and protein. It's not logical. It's not that you can't logic your way through an emotional problem. And I was, a little flustered. I'll just use that word, because I'm like, you're a psychotherapist. Like, you should know this is not just logical, it's emotional. And you're trying to talk about like fats and carbs, So part of it is like, yeah, it sounds all fine and dandy about like, oh, just changing your mindset. But that's why, ladies, you can't just read, you can't like follow a motivational speaker on Instagram and think that through osmosis, you're going to transform. These are deep-seated beliefs. Now, we do not need to go dig up in the emotional graveyard and expose old traumas and psychoanalyze your past. In fact, like, I invite you to stop doing that. You've done that enough. But what you do need to do is take a very right now approach to your current beliefs and paradigm that are keeping you in the mindset that you're in, whether it is in your mindset around your relationships, food, your body. It's all interconnected, as Suzanne is really modeling to you, right? She thought she was coming to me for a food struggle, and it ended up being so much more, And so I just wanted to say that too, ladies. Like, you can't keep trying to logic and reason your way through an emotional problem. Diets won't fix it. Dating apps won't fix it. Whatever, making more money or, accelerating your career will not fix the emotional availability struggle that you have with yourself or self-rejection. Speaking of which, this is a perfect segue. A big part of your journey, kind of after you found your voice, we talked about your relationships, but a big part of it was like finding your voice and finding your work in your professional life. Totally switching gears on you. Like, can you kind of share a little bit about how that aligned with this journey too, and how it all kind of intermingled in the mix?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that. One of the things that I found interesting is as I would fix, I'm air quoting, fix one area in my self-worth, it would pop up in another area, and I would realize, there's still, I still have lingering issues or the limiting beliefs in another area that is tied to this. And it definitely happened in the workplace, where how I was showing up, I was feeling disrespected frequently, but I wasn't modeling how do I respect myself?
Yes.
And clearly defining what are my boundaries and how do I reclaim what needs to be my time versus work time versus what I do for others, what I do for myself, and what I do for the organization I work for. And as I started to redefine what that was, it was not comfortable for everybody, and it's not going to be. But what I learned was how to stand for myself, how to be a stand for me, what it is that I need, what I know to be true for me. And what's true for me might be completely different than what's true for somebody else. But what was true for me was I was in a pattern of always being the fixer, always being the person to take care of all the problems that others didn't want to have to deal with. And, that pattern had shown up in my family role. It showed up on a regular basis that, Suzanne's ultimately so capable, we'll just let her fix all of this stuff. And as a result, I was resentful. I felt like the dumping ground. I frequently, felt like, well, how am I the pack mule of this whole big group? And, and I'm the leader. Why am I getting dumped on this way? And part of it was I was allowing it. Number one. And part of it was also I hadn't drawn my own firm boundaries. And when you draw those boundaries, it can feel at times confrontational, even though it's not. And it's because you're at war with yourself a little bit in those boundaries more than other people are at war about those boundaries. And it's so fascinating to me that when you respect yourself and are clear about how you want that respectful behavior to be shown to you, you then have the tools to be able to calmly and I want to say unemotionally, not charged emotion, to be able to say, it's not okay to talk to me that way. What is it that I can help you? I'm happy to help you, but not when you speak to me that way. Is not confrontational. It's actually quite calm, and it very clearly defines the boundary that this is not about me not being willing to do X, Y, Z. but I'm not willing to be talked to this way or treated this way. And I saw massive shifts in my work relationships that had brought me great angst. And for those that could not accept those shifts, they left.
Yeah.
Because I was standing firm in who I am, and how I was redefining my own worth in my work life. And as I said, several relationships improved because of it, including the relationship with my supervisor. And that was a really angst-filled relationship. And being able to be at a place where we're calm and we can disagree on things, but there is a level of respect that was not there previously, has made all the difference in how I approach my work and enjoy my work.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's so cool. So many different things that you're saying. But part of it is like, ladies, if you have lived in a certain identity your whole life where you're the one that always listens, or you're the one that, people walk over, like some people have come to my calls and they're like, Leanne, I'm a carpet. Like I have a hard time finding my voice and people just walk all over me. Maybe you're the pleaser, the perfectionist, whatever it is. And then you build relationships within that identity and people like get used to you being that version of yourself. Maybe you're the quiet one. Maybe you're the one who always listens but never speaks, right? Maybe you are the ragey one that reacts, But when people get used to you being a certain way and then you shift, if they're not able to receive that shift, it can create a little bit of tension. But the flip side of it too is like, this happens a lot of time with my clients on a couple different levels. One is if my clients build relationships with people that are always like obsessing over food or their weight and all that, and then they get around these women and they're no longer playing that game anymore, but the women that they're around are still like, oh, I can't eat that. It has too many carbs, or, oh, I'm so fat. My clients, like they feel that internal resistance and it's almost like a trigger to them. And we have to deal with that, right? And move towards compassion and all these things. But the other side of it is you might understand or come to realize, and it's not always fun and pretty, as kind of Suzanne was referencing, when you grow and evolve and become brighter and better and more amazing and like shine brighter and all those things, there's going to be people that are threatened by that and they're going to try and knock you down. And then you're going to really see who the best people in your life are, because they're the ones that want you to win. They want everyone to win. They love that you're growing. They love that you're happy. They love that you're succeeding. And it kind of becomes binary. You're going to see, unfortunately, some of your friends are not for you. Maybe some of your family members are threatened by your success. And what a lot of us do is if we're not resilient enough, we shrink back down into our previous identity. And Suzanne had to do a lot of, I was just about to say shrinking up, but you know what I mean? Like going the opposite direction, not pushing back in a defensive way. And here's a big distinction that we talk about, you and I have talked about before. But the difference between standing up for yourself, because that puts you in the defense, you're in fight mode, it kind of puts you in this resistance, versus just being a stand for who you are and being unshakable in who you are. And just being. Not resisting, not fighting back, not on the defense, just standing, being a stand. And then again, the people that are for you will be for you. And the people that aren't, they will disappear themselves from your life.
Yeah. And it's really incredible. I have watched some of those people just kind of melt out of my life. And you're right. I love the distinction between being a stand for yourself and taking a stand, because taking a stand is about like, I'm picking up arms, I'm going to fight. And being a stand is just, I'm going to be truthful to who I am. And I'm just going to stand here in who I know myself to be. And I'm going to make my decisions based on that which I know about myself. And when I'm doing that, regardless of the outcome, I know that the person that I'm ultimately answering to is myself. And not to somebody else's expectations, not to somebody else's rules, not to somebody else's definition of what should be. I'm responding and I'm authentically living in who I want to be, how I want to be, and how I want to show up in the world.
It's such difference. And it comes back to what you were saying about dating. You know how it's like, instead of being like, showing up and like, I hope this person likes me, or, oh my gosh, like, how can I how can I change so that they do? It's like, no, I'm just going to show up as myself. And the person for me is going to just receive me as me and love me for being me and accept me just as I am.
Yes. And, one of the things I had realized in my dating life that I'll share in case it's helpful for somebody else, said this, but truly, this relationship, I think, is the first time I really lived these words completely, is my job in dating was not to become who they wanted me to be. Yeah. My job in dating was to bring who I am and let them decide if they like that. My job was to get to know the other person and decide if I liked them.
Yeah. It's an interview. You're like qualifying them. Absolutely. You realize how flippin' amazing you are finally,
Yeah. And that's not about finding their faults or their flaws, but about can you get to know who they really, really are? And does that match what you really, really want for your life?
Yes, absolutely. And it's about alignment. Instead of trying to fit into somebody's box of what you think you should be or who you think you're supposed to be, it's just you get to be this aligned, integrity-driven, just person that just shows up in all of your brightness and amazingness and eccentricities, and in my case, dorkiness. All of it.
I think all of us have some dorkiness.
Totally. Yes. Like embracing it everywhere. I love it. Well, thank you so much. We've got to get you back on here. These conversations are always just so powerful with you. Anything for anybody listening, whether it's like maybe they're shrinking themselves in their relationships, maybe they're shrinking themselves in their work life, maybe they still haven't found the courage to say, hey, I need help with my food and body struggles. Like anything that you would just kind of parting words to impress upon anybody listening to this that just needs some sort of maybe it's hope, maybe it's inspiration, maybe it's belief, maybe it's a new way of thinking. Anything that you would wish upon or impart upon our listeners?
I would say if you're listening, then you're already identifying that you want something different in your life. Mm. Don't be afraid to pursue what that different is. If it is about food, definitely consider going through the whole Stressless Eating program. And if it's not about food, or you don't think it's about food, if you think it's about stress less, this program still helps. That has been one of the most amazing parts of being involved in Stressless Eating. Part of it is about the food for me, as somebody who definitely ate based on my emotions. But what has been fascinating to me is how this approach of stressing less in my life has applied to all of these different areas of my life. And I am a more peaceful person. I am a much happier person. And I am much more in touch with who I really am and who I really want to be, and how to be the very best version of me. And if that is what you're searching for, then I strongly, strongly encourage you to consider going through this program. It will help you to define who you are, what you stand for in your own life, and how to continue to bring out the very best version of yourself. Mm. And the very best version of yourself is the self that's going to love yourself and open yourself for love from others.
Wow. Oh my gosh. What a beautiful just testament to who you've become and who you're becoming. And thank you for those beautiful words. Grateful to have you here sharing your truth. We definitely have to have you back.
Anytime you'd like. I love having these conversations with you. And I love just the idea that this could be helpful for somebody else to find their own truth and their own value, and to pursue how to make those shifts in their life to be happier and wholer. I guess it's more whole, in how they show up in their life and their own value.
Oh, thank you so much for that. Yeah, your wisdom is definitely an inspiration, and I guarantee you helping anybody who's listening to this right now. So thank you for being here. Ladies, thank you for listening. We are going to sign out for today's episode, but we will catch you on the next one. Bye. Thanks for tuning into today's show. If you like what you heard and you're interested in breaking out of your own food, body, and diet prison, here's what I want you to do next. Head on over to stresslesseating.com. That's stresslesseating.com. And sign up to watch the Stressless Eating webinar, where I'll walk you through the exact 5-step game plan my female clients use to conquer emotional eating, self-sabotage, and finally heal themselves from the restrictive all-or-nothing diet mentality for good.
but without obsessing or spending years in therapy to address it. I've laid it all out there for you in 5 easy steps. Remember, healing your relationship with food and your body does not happen by itself. You need expert guidance to make it happen, and we've helped clients all over the world take back their power from the food and find true and lasting freedom while enjoying life and warm chocolate chip cookies along the way. To see if we can help you do the same, head on over to stresslesseating.com. I'm Leanne Ellington, and I'll see you next time.